It's that time again. I'm clearing out lots of gear. Sorry in advance to the people that I offend in this video. I work with gear all day. I've purchased a ton of gear over the years. Companies have sent me gear over the years. So just a lot of gear in general. And I'm the type of person that if a piece of gear is sitting there for, let's say, I don't know, 1 or 2 years, I figure that it's just time to get rid of it and reinvest. In other words, I'm basically the opposite of a hoarder. The entity of this video is in no way like a diss or an insult to the companies whose gear I'm choosing to get rid of for my own personal reasons. In fact, a lot of the gear I'm getting rid of is really high quality. It's really just more of a creative, like where I'm at right now type of situation. You guys know how it is. We all evolve and adapt over time. And I've actually gotten great use of a lot of the gear that I'm going to be getting rid of. I'm actually sad to see some of it go, but I only have so much time to learn gear. And my general rule is that if I haven't touched it, or in some cases even thought about it in like over a year, then it's time to go. I think that's a healthy mindset to live by. For me, the exciting part of this video is what's next. And that's something that we'll be talking about over on my Patreon in the extended version of this video, along with even more gear that I'm getting rid of. Speaking of Patreon, I always like to mention this at the beginning of the video. I've ironically left links for all of the gear mentioned in this video in the description. Might not be where I'm at, but it might be where you're at. Maybe my reason to get rid of something is another person's reason to purchase it. My Discord has also really picked up recently, which is a free forum where we just discuss about gear all day. It's community vibes, there's a bunch of brains in there, so if you have any like tech questions or just want to shoot the shit about gear, there is an invite link in the description of this video for that as well. And today's sponsor is DistroKid. You guys probably already know. I highly recommend DistroKid as a music distribution platform. We'll be getting into reasons why they're the best specifically for independent artists and producers later in this video. Now, let's start with that list. You already know where I'm going with this one. In front of me, I have the OG Digitakt. I now own the Digitakt 2. Here's one of the videos that I put out with it. The Digitakt was actually on my gear I'm never gonna sell list, but I think this is fair game. The Digitakt 2 is just better in every single way, and it has pretty much the exact same workflow as the Digitakt. So glad that they didn't change any of the core elements of that. The Digitakt 2 has stereo sampling. It's got way more room for patterns, way more slots for samples, way more pattern space as well, or I should say pages per pattern. It's got an extra LFO. The filter is a lot more intuitive. The list goes on. I'm assuming that the Digitakt 2's tech is also a little bit more advanced, which leaves room for updates. And obviously Elektron is going to be focusing their attention more on the Digitakt 2 rather than the Digitakt. So reason to get rid of it. I'm getting rid of the Microfreak. Yes, I am absolutely horrible. I know. Let me just start by explaining how awesome this thing really is. It's portable, it's got several synth engines to choose from. It's now also able to sample with one of its most recent updates. The Microfreak is also just really well versed in terms of who could use this synth. It makes for a great entry-level synth, and you see pros using it a lot too. The only reason, my friends, why I'm getting rid of it is just like with the Digitakt 2 versus OG Digitakt, I have the Minifreak, so it's just better, in my opinion. As you'd expect, the Minifreak does have a very similar sound quality to it as compared to the Microfreak. These days, honestly, I've really just been sequencing my synths using the One mostly, but the Minifreak does have keys, whereas the Microfreak does not have actual playing keys. That being said, the Microfreak does have polyphonic aftertouch, whereas the Minifreak does not. Another advantage of the Microfreak here is its CV capability. So if you're more of a modular person, then this might be a better option for you. I'm not a modular person. The Microfreak is mono out, the Minifreak is stereo out with these nice digital effects here. There's also a stereo in if you'd like to process other gear through these digital effects. The Minifreak just feels more tactile. Obviously, it takes up a bigger space. There's more to work with here. All things considered, I gravitate more towards the Minifreak, and there's a lot of crossover here. So I feel like this is the move. I'm getting rid of the Microfreak. Can't believe I just said that. Another one or two that you might be surprised about, the Digitone as well as the Korg Volca FM2. I mean, the Digitone can be considered the Korg Volca FM2 on steroids, so that's an obvious reason for getting rid of this one. So let's focus more on why I'm getting rid of the Digitone. It was actually one of the first synths that I owned, same with the Microfreak. Definitely my first FM synth. This is what introduced me into that whole FM sound. FM synthesis is cool. Right now, it's not really my thing. I tried to make myself like the drum sounds on the Digitone, but I just couldn't. Especially in the high end, like the hi-hats are very harsh and like dissonant sounding, which is what you would expect from an FM synth. There is so much depth to the low end of the Digitone. A lot of people don't realize this. I find that a nice plucky, like deep FM bass is some of the deepest that I've heard. You can obviously get really gnarly with the sound design on this thing too, obviously within the world of FM. And once again, going back to the idea of overlap or maybe just like overshadowing, I find weirdly that the Motor Synth Mark II is very similar to the Digitone in terms of sound quality. Like there's something about it that's similar. I'm definitely gonna be making some more videos, giving some more love to the Motor Synth Mark II, just because these are some of my favorite sounding oscillators in the game right now. Like this in combination with the Oxy One, I absolutely love that combination. I feel like I could make like a full sample pack just with those two together. 3 voices that you can control separately on the Motor Synth. There's 4 voices here. Obviously elektron sequencer, so this just completely trumps the sequencer on the Motor Synth, which is why I'm using the Oxy One to sequence it. I would say that the Motor Synth is at least equally as deep or maybe even deeper of a sound design tool in comparison to the Digitone. There's also a random preset generator on this thing, which I've been making lots of use of. And I know that selecting this, I'm sort of like contradicting myself in a way, because this is almost like a gateway, or maybe not a gateway, but a bridge to the modular world. But as I said earlier, I'm not really a modular guy. I'm just using it for its high quality oscillators, fully analog. This thing just sounds amazing. And yes, I've explored the Digitakt. I've done videos on the Digitakt. It has so much to offer, but again, it's not a sound that I've been gravitating towards for like the past 1 or 2 years. So I figure it's time to get rid of it. Hopefully this little rocket knob doesn't bring down the value of the unit. Also, pro tip for Digitone users, and also now Digitakt 2 users, it's the same overdrive on the master mix. And that overdrive sounds fucking good on drums, so process your drums through it. You're welcome in advance, and that would be the only thing that I'd be missing about this unit, but it's on the Digitakt 2, so all good. Another big one, the MPC One. I've done a lot of great videos with the MPC One. It was like my finger drumming machine for a while. It's perfect for that. In the early on SP404 Mark II days, I did a comparison between the MPC One and the SP404 Mark II. I guess you could call this like a custom unit. I've really decked this thing out with a yellow sticker, and I also changed up the pads. So yeah, this is like a really custom unit. And even still now, the SP404 is slowly creeping up in a way on the MPC workflow. We're now at update 4.04, which just brings the instrument to a new level. It's still very affordable for what it's capable of doing. Here's a video on that. The 404 Mark II is just as capable, in some ways more capable than the MPC One. The biggest one for me with the 404 Mark II is that you're now able to export individual pads to stems using the 404 Mark II software app. The 404 Mark II is also efficient at controlling or being controlled via MIDI. You can control effects and multiple parameters live if you just have like a little MIDI controller. You can also control other things using the 404's sequencer. And I'm not going to say that the MPC One is not great at controlling other units. It is masterful at controlling other units, but it does not like to be controlled, especially when it comes to any sort of effects functions or anything like sophisticated. It just bugs out right away. Honestly, this was sort of like the beginning of the end for me when I found out that the MPC One didn't get along with being controlled by other units. I found that this major weakness sort of just jaded my purchase of the MPC One, especially when it's advertised as being like the ultimate unit that could do it all. It can do a lot if you're using it more as like a studio tool, as a portable DAW. For that, it's great, it's amazing. The screen is way more descriptive than the SP404 Mark II. I just find that this is more of a live performance tool, and this is a DAW. And so maybe if you're tired of looking at your computer screen and you're looking for that portable DAW in a box with like an integrated tactile workflow, the MPC One is perfect for you. If you want to get into finger drumming, it's a way better finger drumming unit than the SP404 Mark II. These pads don't really do it for me for finger drumming. They're a bit glitchy. Great piece of gear, sad to see it go. I put so much work into customizing it, but it's time to let it go. This one's maybe a little bit less controversial considering how many people just took a great big on it upon its release. Honestly, I sort of get the hate, but I also don't get the hate. It sounds the way it sounds. I mean, not all drum machines have to slap beyond belief. I think what rubbed people the wrong way were the 4 analog sounds, which you can't switch out, and those are the ones that sound kind of thin, right? So you're stuck with them. In terms of drum sound design and completely changing up the character of these analog drums, you're able to add different types of digital transients over top of them. But still, no matter what transients that you choose, the drums do sound kind of thin. Outside of the actual sounds of the drum machine, there was nothing especially intuitive about, let's say, the sequencer or any other part of the drum machine, really, right? Maybe a little bit mid in comparison to other machines on the market, especially Elektron units. Like, it just does not compare. All that being said, it has a sound. It's not a sound that I've been really gravitating towards recently, and that's the reason why I'm getting rid of it. And just a unit that I've never really dug into, honestly, that's kind of similar to the Drumlogue is the Digitakt, which does have, I think, 4 analog voices and an elektron sequencer. The Polyend Play and the Polyend Tracker, every one of these is controversial, I know. Okay, so we'll start with the Polyend Play on this one. Again, it's about the overlap within my setup. Hear me out. A lot of people love the Play specifically for sequencing. That being said, again, I have the MPC One, which there's just no comparison. It's a way stronger sequencer. If you think of it logically, again, the Polyend Play does have an amazing sequencer, but it's focused on a lot of other things as well. Whereas something like the MPC One, it's a similarly priced unit. All it is a sequencer, so that's where all of its focus goes. So within my collection, in that sense, the Polyend Play became obsolete. And with this one, it really comes down to my workflow specifically. Yes, the Polyend Play does have really interesting performance effects. I would say that that's one of the highlights of the unit. But given my current more advanced and personalized setup, that being Ableton Live, I find personally that the effects here just don't really compare. Also, something like the SP404 is another unit that I could use for effects. And it's just much more developed in that realm. In my opinion, it just fits me better. And just so you understand where my current workflow is right now, I'm essentially using instruments like this to sample and then drop those samples into Ableton Live to perform with. Recently, for anything that has like a tracker-ish type of workflow, especially for drums, I've just been relying on the Digitakt anyway. I just feel like I don't have the time to really dive into the Polyend Play and give it justice, learn it as well as I've learned other instruments like the Digitakt, which has just taken the spotlight for me. It's funny how gear and companies like that works, right? It's like, it's almost luck of the draw. Whatever you start with, whatever you become most comfortable with, that is just like your workflow. At the same time, I don't think it's a coincidence that Elektron is consistently the most used electronic music instrument, especially for genres like techno. Anything sequencer based, people just go to Elektron. As for the Polyend Tracker, this one's actually really easy. I have the Polyend Tracker Mini, which is capable of doing everything that this thing can do and much more in a tiny little handheld unit. I guess the only thing that's really missing is the track wheel here, which I personally am not missing. Also, the way they designed this, it's quite intuitive, so I don't feel like the workflow is any slower from one unit to the next. They're both quite efficient. Daunting at first, but once you get used to them, they're great. And here's a video I did on the Polyend Tracker Mini, by the way, if you want to check that out. The next units I'm getting rid of are my pocket operators. Before getting into reasons why though, let's talk about today's sponsor, DistroKid. Here is a few reasons why they are the best choice as a music distribution platform for independent artists and producers. In terms of what's new, they recently released a smartphone app, which makes checking your important DistroKid stats easy and accessible. The app is now available on Android through the Play Store. Essentially everything that you've been able to do on the DistroKid desktop app, you're now able to do through your smartphone. In fact, here's a list of key features that the app offers you. You might want to pause it now if you want to check them out. In today's day and age, we all know how many hats we have to wear as artists and producers. It can just be a lot, so write the music, produce the music. Then you've got to create content to promote it a few weeks before it's released. Then you've got to continue creating content after it's been released to promote it. It's a lot, and I'm not saying that DistroKid does all of this work for you, but they do make it a lot easier for us with the free promotional tools that they offer. The one I use most is Hyperfollow. It's essentially a free landing page or link tree. It's super clean. You could link maybe your latest video, your latest single, other important links you'd like to lead people to. I also use promo cards whenever I release a single. Just select the single that you would like to promote and it'll auto-generate a few different options for you to choose from. Go with DistroKid. It's just over $20 a year to release unlimited music to all major streaming platforms. You keep 100% of your streaming royalties. So many other tools that they offer for someone who's independent. They're made for us. And there is a discount linked in the description of this video if you would like to join. Okay, so now we're gonna move on to the teenage engineering portion of this video. Yes, I'm getting rid of the rest of my pocket operators. So the PO12 rhythm, the PO32 tonic, the PO35 speak, as well as the PO33 KO. Teenage engineering was like the beginning gateway into the sequencer, synth, DAWLESS world for me and for a lot of synth users, I would say. They're just such simple units. I find that it's sort of a case of like been there, done that. Yes, I understand how pocket operators work. And I also see where they're going next with the EP series. Like the EP 133, it just went bonkers upon release. And they're obviously gonna be adding EPs to the series. You could already see it. There's just so much crossover between the PO workflow and the EP 133 workflow, but the EP 133 is a lot more capable than pocket operators, right? So they're sort of like filling in the gap between pocket operators, which are super simple, and the OPZ. It's like kind of in the middle there. And because of that workflow crossover between these and the EP series, I feel like now is just a good time to let them go. Continuing on with the elimination of teenage engineering, the TX6. All right, so why? Why, oh why would I be getting rid of the TX6? I actually got some really great use out of this thing. It's definitely one of a kind. In terms of an actual professional performance mixer, I picked up the Model 1.4 a few years ago, so that's been my go-to for like any sort of live performance thing. Obviously, this does not compare to it in any way, shape, or form. For me though, I found that I got the most use out of this thing as a content creator. So let me explain. Anyone living in Canada, you probably know about Moog Audio. They're a synth audio DJ retailer based in my hometown in Montreal. And I've actually been filming vertical content for their channels for almost a couple years now. It's a great job. They're the best team. And so this is where the TX6 really came into play. There were instances in videos where I wanted to record several units at once with something that's super, portable and easy to travel with. So I'd show up with my TX6, plug in the instruments, and then send audio out from the TX6 directly into my iPhone when I'm recording vertical content. So it was just a very streamlined workflow. And so for me, for that sort of thing, I could not recommend the TX6 more. It was like perfect for that sort of setup, that sort of setting. But I don't find myself making that sort of content for Moog Audio anymore. I make like individual instrument content now, so I don't really need the TX6 or any other mixer to perform several instruments at the same time. Outside of that very specific instance, I didn't find myself using the TX6 very much. I will say that the effects are super cool. Just like all of Teenage Engineering stuff, the design is obviously an attraction. It does have an interesting workflow. I will say one con about this mixer is that even though sometimes it's not peaking, it sounds like it is. Like the audio quality gets distorted sometimes a little bit. It's no secret that with Teenage Engineering, especially with their items that are extremely well designed, that sometimes the actual sonic quality of said instrument takes a back seat. I'm sorry to say it, I said it. And I actually don't find that about the EP series, especially for the price. The EP 133 is very capable. Same with the OPZ, I find that it's fairly priced for what it's capable of doing and its quality. But when you're paying what is it, $1,200? You'd expect for the audio quality to be amazing. And that is my honest take on the TX6. That's it for this video. My Discord is popping right now, so join up, link in the description. Also, if you'd like to see the extended version of this video, I'm selling some other gear, maybe you'd like to know about that. For me, the exciting part is what am I investing into next? All of that in the extended version over on Patreon. Thank you for being here and hope to see you soon.